Hi everybody, it's Adam from LUCIDPIXUL. I'm very happy you're here to join me today. Today I want to talk about directing versus teaching. Not only from the director or teacher's perspective, but from the student or employees, the professional artist's perspective. Because this is something that has actually been sitting in the back of my head for a while. This is a subject that I've had a lot of experience in, both at the receiving end and the giving end. And I've learned some important distinctions that I feel really need to be said. Now, before I continue forward, I want to make it very clear. I am not singling anybody out. I am not pointing fingers at anybody. And if you do find that some of the things I described today are reflective of some of the educators or directors that you've dealt with or are dealing with right now, it doesn't necessarily mean you point the finger and say, bad teacher. It doesn't mean that at all. Everybody teaches in their own different style, and sometimes certain teachers can have certain shortcomings, but other strengths that greatly compensate for it, and vice versa. However, if you are dealing with certain types of teachers and you are really feeling a negative impact by it, maybe this should give you some food for thought on whether or not you're with the right kind of teacher, or with the right kind of director for that matter. So the first thing I want to talk about is communication. Because in both cases of being a director or being a teacher, your ultimate job is to communicate your thoughts, as I'm communicating with you right now. How you communicate as a director and as a teacher differs. There's a difference between these two forms of communication, at least the quality and quantity of that kind of information. As a teacher, my role as a teacher when I'm teaching my private mentorship, when I'm teaching in a brick and mortar school, if I'm teaching at the college, my job is to answer any and every question as clearly as possible. My job is also, one of the things that to me makes a good teacher is somebody who has the ability to understand the learning process. And what I mean by that is to be able to describe things in vivid, clear detail, having the vocabulary to be able to describe something in ways that other people understand. Where very often I find teachers fall short is where they say something assuming too much. So let's say if somebody says, how do I do light? How do I do shading on a sphere? They go, okay, well, this is how the light's coming from this direction. So, the ellipse is going to go in that direction and the light's going to come from here. So you're going to want to light that side of the sphere and keep that in shadow. It's cool. And they leave it at that. And the artist goes, oh yeah, okay, cool. All right. And they come back a week later and they're like, discouraged and stressed. And you go, what's wrong? And they go, oh, well, I tried to light it and shade it. And you look at the drawing they did and it's all squiggly and squashy and it's all patchworky and it looks really, really sloppy. And the teacher again goes, oh, you just do the lightings from here. What they're not realizing is that what the teacher failed to notice and what the teacher failed to see was that they needed to demonstrate how to do it. There's a lot that goes into painting that lighting to make it look effective. What direction you go with your brush stroke? How do you use your hand? What kind of pressure? How do you set your stylus? How do you hold your stylus? What's the proper value to use for lighting? What's the difference between drawing base lighting or drawing the specular? How do I approach bounce light? And how do I make that bounce light look good? What kind of brushes do I use? Blah, 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 blah. How do I blend? How do I do this? How do I do that? So you're literally taking the person by the hand and showing them, figuratively speaking, of course, because you can't grab a person's hand through the webcam. That would be pretty creepy, though. Wouldn't that be cool? But technically, you're walking them through it. You're taking them through step by step. And it's your job as a teacher to recognize, okay, he doesn't know how to blend yet. Okay, she doesn't understand ellipses yet. So maybe I need to take it a step back and show them how a three-dimensional sphere works and where the cross-sections work and all that kind of thing. That's a teacher's job, to recognize that and walk them through that. That is not, however, a director's job. By the time you get hired in a studio, a director's job is not to hold your hand and walk you through how to do a drawing. You're getting hired and paid to know that already. That's what your education that granted you, confided you. You are educated, either self-educated or educated in a school system. You're expected to know this kind of stuff. However, a director's job is to communicate clearly what the overall vision is, what the demand of the client is, or what the demand of the studio itself is. So an example of a good director is somebody who has the proper artistic vocabulary to walk you through what you need to do. Once, maybe twice. Once they've done that, it's up to you to be able to sit down and think about it and research it and really absorb everything that they've said and try your best to execute it. But you have to fill in all those gaps yourself with all the technical stuff. The technical stuff is your job. The director's not going to teach you that stuff. But they do have to communicate the vision clearly. And I have dealt with great directors that said, okay, when you're doing this, remember that we're going to be using this warm lighting over here because we're trying to establish this type of mood. And try to bring yourself closer to the camera because we really work a lot with facial expressions in this. So make sure we see that face really clearly. So don't give me too much negative space in the environment. Really come up, try to crop tight. Cool, I can do that. What kind of attitude? What kind of line style? Well, here's a couple of examples of line style we really like. I know that I picked you for the job because you have a very similar style to that. I'm sure you'll be able to pick that up, and they send you on your way. So you know what you're doing, how to do it, where to do it, and you know what kind of quality they're looking for, what kind of an execution they're expecting from you. But the technical stuff, that's your job. That's good direction. But I'll give you an example of bad direction. This is an actual real life example. I don't know if I ever used this example in an earlier art talk, but one day he sits me down and says, okay, Adam, today we're going to be drawing these cartoon monkeys for this kids thing. Okay, cool. So I start drawing these cartoon monkeys, blah, blah, blah. And he looks at it after I spent about half a day working on it, and he looks at them and he goes, they need to be more anatomical. You know, anatomical. Yeah. And unfortunately, he was the type of director who already had a very snappy temper. So I felt very reluctant to go, what do you mean by anatomical? That would have triggered him. So I went, anatomical, okay, well, okay, all right. And when you hear anatomy, anatomical means anatomy. So when you hear anatomy, you hear muscles, bones, flexing, anatomy, right? So, okay, so I go and I start drawing them more muscular. That's what he's asking for. I feel really off doing this, but I did it. He comes back about 2 or 3 hours later. He looks at me and he goes, what the hell is this? I asked for more anatomical. I said, well, there's not more anatomical for you. That's what you're asking for. And he goes, no, more anatomical. This is not anatomical. This is not anatomical enough. More. And I'm sitting there going, okay, are you cuckoo? If I do it any more anatomical than this, it's going to start looking macabre. It's going to start looking like I tore the flesh off of these things. What the hell are you asking for? Are these cartoon monkeys or Jeff Cavalier from Athlete X that you're talking about? I said I want anatomical, give me anatomical. If you can't do that, then you're not suited for the job. And I'm sitting there going, I'm starting to stress out. I'm sitting there going, okay, now my job's at risk, but okay. And I draw these things and I'm sitting there, while I'm drawing, I'm sitting there going, I don't know what the hell this guy's asking for. Why is he making me do this? This doesn't make any sense. These are for kids. This is scary. This doesn't make any sense. It's gross. But whatever, I draw them and I look at him and I go, what do you think of that? And he goes, takes his pencil, he throws it on the ground. I don't know what I'm doing with you. I have no idea. And he goes, I don't know. And he walks away, all fed up. And I'm like, I'm sitting there red in the face, embarrassed. I don't know what the hell he's asking of me. And one of my colleagues, who happened to be a director too in his time as well, he turns around and he goes, Adam, I think he means volumetric. And I went, he means volume? More? Yeah, make it more three-dimensional. And I went, oh, for God's sakes, why didn't he just say that? Whatever, I think that's what he means. Because he'd been working with this director for years. So I said, just trust me on this one. I think that's what he's talking about. I was like, fine. 20 minutes later, made it more three-dimensional. I showed it to him and he goes, there, was that complicated, Adam? Was that so hard? And I went, okay, well, I think what you meant was volumetric. You're asking for anatomical. Anatomical means muscles, anatomy. Volume means three-dimensionality. He goes, don't talk to me like I'm an idiot. I know the difference. And I said, okay. Whose fault was that? Was that mine? No, I had the ability to do what he was asking me of, but he wasn't communicating it properly. He wasn't an artist. He didn't understand the difference between volume and anatomy, and that put me in a terrible situation. But of course, being the asshole he was, excuse my French, he pointed the blame at me for that. That's his fault. Okay? When you're dealing with somebody who's asking for something, when you're dealing with a director who's asking for something, and they're not communicating that to you properly, and you have the skill, and you're getting frustrated, that's their fault. Now, I didn't point fingers at them and say, you don't know what you're talking about, because I'm a professional. And a professional learns how to not show up their director. One little piece of decorum: if you are dealing with a teacher or are dealing with a director that you can see is lacking experience, their heart's in the right place, but they're lacking experience, never, ever show them up in front of everybody. Never point them out and say, you don't know what you're talking about. Never do that. Because you're not only attacking somebody's pride, you're not only hurting somebody's feelings and embarrassing them, but you might be wrong. So be very careful with that. Even if you're confident that you're right, a professional does not point people out, especially not in public. If somebody's really pissing you off, you don't turn around and go, what the hell's your problem, in front of everybody. That is ticket out the door immediately. What you do, if you can, is do you mind if we talk for a sec? There's something I wanted to talk to you about. And you take them into somewhere private and you say, I'm not understanding. You're getting frustrated with me, but I'm having a hard time understanding your direction. A decent director will say, oh, okay, well, I understand. Well, listen, it's just blah, blah, blah. You work it out. In a lot of cases, if not more cases, they'll say, well, it's your job to know what I'm talking about. And they'll point the blame at you. That's what an asshole would do. But showing up your director, talking behind their back, bitching them out, embarrassing them in public, telling them they don't know what they're talking about, is a very amateur move, and you're going to get yourself fired doing that. So don't. If you're really dealing with a difficult director like I was, and they're really intolerable, and they have bad attitudes, and they're being humiliating or demotivating, say, I understand. You smile, and you look for another job, and as soon as you get another job, you get the hell out of there. You exit running. And even when you're on your way out the door, you don't say, yeah, and screw you. No, you just say, thank you for your time. You shake their hand and you walk out. Because remember, everything you do has a domino effect. Everything triggers something else. And it's a small world. If you bitch out one director, that director has enough weight in the industry to bitch you out to everybody else and leave a stain on your career. Maybe yes, maybe no, but that's not something you want to take a chance with. So keep those types of feelings to yourself. Now, when it comes to a teacher, all of those questions get answered. What do I charge? How do I hold a pencil? What kind of texture do I put on something? What's too much? How long do I spend on something? What kind of questions should I ask? How do I do this? How do I do that? How do I hold a pencil? What kind of brush settings? Anything and everything goes. It's a teacher's job to take it down to its simplest form and build you up from the ground up. And if at any point you're sitting going, it's the teacher's job to look at you and go, did you get that? No? Okay, let's go over it again. Because a teacher knows that artistic principles are damn complicated, even the simple ones, and you have to go over them 1,000 times. Now, there's one more thing I want to mention about directing and teaching. And it has to do with the ecosystem itself, the energy, the vibe, the approach, the attitude of your teacher or your director. And this is pretty universal. And what it is learn to distinguish, especially if you're younger, learn to distinguish the difference between a professional teacher and a jerk. And this, when I mean jerk, usually the word jerk is associated with men. No, women take equal responsibility for this. I've watched many of the world's most celebrated concept artists and illustrators and fine arts out there, and there's videos and there's webcasts and there's all different kinds of things going on, different types of venues where people are doing critiques of other people's work, or they're sharing their opinion, or they're talking about their own experiences and stuff like that. And again, I'm not singling anybody out whatsoever. That cross the line from being teachers and guides to being bullies. And you see this often, and it pisses me off, okay? If I was there, I would have shut them down really quickly. If any teacher of yours, be it in real life, public, or online, or doing a video critique like me and Tyler would do for the Brush Sauce Theater, if it's any of those things, and the person makes you feel stupid for not knowing something at all, okay? Why did you do that? Like asking insulting questions? right? Why'd you do that? What's the point of this? What was your point with that? What's your goal? Can't you see? Any of those belittling questions that make you question yourself and say, can't you see that hand is about 3 times the size it's supposed to be? Like, aren't you looking? Aren't you paying attention? Is a bully tactic. It's not teaching. A teacher would not say, why did you do that? Because that's asking questions like that is putting that person in a position where they're questioning their own intelligence. Your job isn't only to be a technical guide, but an emotional guide as well. And if somebody is going to feel vulnerable, don't prey on that vulnerability. And I've seen this online. People just kind of look at it and go, why'd you do that? Why'd you do this? No, a teacher doesn't say, why did you do that? A teacher said, have you noticed that you did this? No, I just said, well, look at the head and look at the hands. Do you see the difference? Now look at my head and my hands. Do you see the size difference? Yeah, well, look at yours. Oh, wow. I said, do you see that, eh? Well, pay attention to those things. That's how a teacher would teach it. An asshole would say, why did you draw their hands like that? Or laugh at them or point at them or say, you're lacking experience. You clearly didn't put a lot of time into this because this looks like crap. And even if they don't use the word crap, they're embarrassing you. They're making you feel stupid. And if a teacher makes you feel stupid, well, I hate to break it to you, but you suck as a teacher, right? You suck as a teacher. You don't know how to teach yet. You're just an elitist. And if that's the case, you can do the rest of your teaching on Reddit and leave the professional teaching to the real teachers. All right? So there's my little opinion. And remember, I'm not singling out anybody. As far as I'm concerned, most of the people that are out there online are absolutely magically awesome. So if you know anything about my channel, I'm always encouraging and soliciting other schools as well, not just my own, because I want you guys to have access to the best education out there. So hopefully you enjoyed my art talk. Remember to like and subscribe if that's something you're up for. And remember the Brush Sauce Theater with myself and Tyler Edlin, where we give art critiques. And that's, I just took a screenshot of my watch there. remember the Brush Sauce Theater art contest. You can go and sign up right now. All the information is going to be in the description below. Remember my private mentorship, where if you're interested in learning, I'll do my best not to be a jerk to you. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed and happy painting. Take care.